Hello, we continue our broadcasting from Kiev, and we are very happy that our guest today is Tom Cooper. He is a famous Austrian military analyst. Tom, hello, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Hello, Lyudmila. Thank you very much for inviting me. Nice to be with you.
Thank you. Tom, first of all, I'd like to ask you and to thank you for your support of Ukrainian army, and if it is possible, just could you say a couple of words about this support? I think it is quite important to know about that.
Well, thank you. I'm a little bit humbled by your attention to this topic. Yes, since more than a year, I'm collecting for a sort of charity, which is taking care to supply equipment to different, whatever ZSU units call and say we need this or we need that, we need rechargers, field generators, even UAVs, thermal imagers, Starlink terminals, laptops, batteries, whatever you want, and down to heaters or warmers for hands and feet in winter, extremely important. Lots of medical equipment, lots of medicine, which is hard to find or hard to get, really a lot. And this is what we are doing. There is a lady, Anastasia, in Kryvyi Rih. All the money is going to the accounts that are under her control, and there is no bureaucracy, nothing. Whatever unit calls and says we need this or that, we are taking care of, or she is taking care to acquire the equipment, pack it, and ship it. And usually, something like average response time between request and the time the unit in question has received it is 1 or 2 weeks, something like that. So let's say 10 to 14 days. So this is what we are doing. Basically, I'm doing actually very next to nothing. I'm just posting updates on my blog and posting photographs, of troops which have received the equipment and account numbers which are all in Ukraine, and everything else is done by Anastasia. First and foremost, she meanwhile has a few friends who are also helping, but primarily by Anastasia. She's doing everything and she's doing fantastic. And I would like to extend my special thanks and gratitude to her for all of her work, because she's doing this next to her main job and next to taking care of her son and next to taking care of her husband, who is also serving in the ZSU and fighting on the front line.
Do I understand right that it is a support from the Western countries, Western citizens?
Yes. Primarily, we are collecting donations all over the world, but primarily from UK, from Germany, from France, and then from Central European countries. For example, a lot of people from the Czech Republic, from Slovakia, also from Austria, of course, Italy. Lots of people from Italy, and of course the USA. Not to talk about Scandinavian countries, especially Sweden, Denmark. So whoever is reading my blog is regularly updated on what are we doing and how's the account numbers. And there are so many people who are so kind to donate. It's incredible. We have even received, a big car for free. And it was just delivered to, I think, 93rd Brigade a few days ago. It was quite a complex operation, because somebody is presenting you his car. It's not that easy to organize this in the EU. Then you have to transfer this car all the way from in this case, UK to Ukraine. You need special insurance. You need somebody who is driving the car. You need, it takes time. So it took nearly 2 months to organize all of this. But now this car is with I said, 92nd or 93rd Brigade, and they are in the course of accepting it into service. That it needs some repairs and so on, and repainting, of course, because you need tactical green color to better camouflage it, and so on and so on. So this is what we are doing. So I mean, what actually Anastasia is doing and what Edward Burkhardt in Germany are doing, and I'm just requesting people to be so kind and continue sponsoring this operation.
Tom, thank you so much for your help and for help of everybody who support Ukrainian army. And given your ongoing analysis of Ukrainian war, how would you describe the battlefield situation right now from strategic and maybe operational point of view?
From strategic, it's a stalemate. Nothing changed. And these few meters, I mean, under apostrophe, few meters, sometimes it's several kilometers. This is unpleasant and causing losses to Ukraine, but in grand total, changing nothing. The Russians have no means to defeat Ukraine. Sadly, Ukraine has no means to defeat Russia. Difference is that while the Russian political and military leadership has no idea how to defeat Ukraine, Ukrainian political and military leadership are refusing to reform in necessary fashion to defeat Russia. So you have it, they have it, Kiev has it on hands to do something under apostrophes. There are lots of things that it would have to do, but it's doing nothing and not learning from its own mistakes. And this is why Ukrainian armed forces remain mediocre, or at least most of them remain mediocre in their effectiveness. There are few units which are excelling in their effectiveness, which are leading the way and showing how could it be done in all of Ukraine and all of the Ukrainian armed forces. But the leadership is refusing to apply these lessons, refusing to learn its own lessons. And therefore, Ukraine at strategic level is not winning the war, instead of at least causing even more massive losses to the Russians than it is already doing. That is a strategic level. At tactical level, I remain pleasantly surprised by the effectiveness of the group of forces in Sumy area. They did great the last few months, and that's largely on their own. Fortunately, one must say nowadays, without any kind of micromanagement from Kiev. The situation is critical in Kupiansk area because of micromanaging or despite the micromanagement or attempts to micromanage by the leadership in Kiev. But there the third corps is doing well because the third assault brigade is doing so well, and this unit has closeted all of the units subordinated to it by elements of its small subunits from its own. They are retraining neighboring units. They are retraining everybody, and there is a joint command, and this is working very well despite often very critical situation. And one should keep in mind this one corps of what is that? Officially, it's 5 brigades, not even that, 5 brigades. Sorry, is under attack by 3 corps of the Russian armed forces, or 3 armies, if you like. And it's holding out. So this is not an easy situation, but the team over there is doing great. Then you have this critical situation, in particular in Kupiansk, sorry, not in Kupiansk, in Pokrovsk area, primarily caused by macromanagement from above. Whenever he orders pointless counterattack to restore some position, which is absolutely pointless, they are forwarding such orders further. Brigade and battalion commanders then have to act on their own. Some are following the orders, others say yes, but do something else, and so on. So the result is a chaos. And another result is that all the units in that area are critically understaffed. Some are down to 50-60% of their nominal strength. It's very unpleasant to talk about all of this. It's painful even. And because it's not necessary, we have seen when Drapati was leading this sector, he has stabilized it in a matter of few weeks and was already running effective counterattacks. So it's all about command, quality of training. That is crucial. And the better these are, the better the units are performing, the less losses Ukraine is suffering, the more effective is it at warfare, and so on and so on. So, but this is what ZSU, particularly in Pokrovsk sector, is currently lacking, and that is not going to change until there is major change at the top. This is absolutely crystal clear. Meanwhile, there must be a change at the top. There must be a change that is going to affect retraining of all the units, retraining of commanders, brigade commanders, battalion commanders, company commanders, retraining of troops, improved treatment of troops by their superior officers, and then And this is also one of the problems, that there is a Russian breakthrough, what a surprise, and then Syrskyi reacts. But he didn't react all the time before, while there was a time to do something. And then there is all the time the repeat of same old failures, like ripping brigades apart and sending their battalions to entirely different sectors of the front line to patch the front line. Oh no, brigade so and so. Okay, now you are sending your battalion there, and who else is around? This brigade. Okay, you have one battalion reserve. You send that battalion, to the other side of Ukraine. Always the same, and we see this since Bakhmut all the time, and nobody learns anything at all because there is no culture of reviewing mistakes by commanders. On the contrary, commanders are holy, and if you come to the idea to criticize, especially somebody like Syrskyi, you are actually playing with your head, so to say. And this is the principal problem. I mean, by all the time, when you take, there was a commander of the 3rd Assault Brigade last year in October, November. There was an interview with him, and he said he would need 6 to 9 months to retrain the entire force, the entire ground force of the Ukrainian armed forces. So now we are in August. He could have done this already long ago, but he couldn't because he wasn't left to do so. So all he has managed was to retrain the 3rd Corps. And the 3rd Corps is, as I said, it's holding out against 3 armies of the Russian armed forces. 3 armies. That is multiple divisions. Each division is bigger by the number of troops than the single or 5 brigades in that Ukrainian Corps. And they are holding out. While Syrskyi with his methods, Syrskyi and his buddies with his methods cannot bring the situation in Pokrovsk under control. And he's losing control, actually. Because meanwhile, the Russians are deploying so much firepower that Ukrainian positions cannot even be properly held as positions. It's either so that Ukraine is holding different spots which are far away from each other, so far away that they cannot provide mutual support, that it is very hard to bring them ammunition and supplies, and that the Russian troops are, infiltrating their in between of them, and then they can walk for 15, even for 50 kilometers behind the Ukrainian lines. Can you imagine that unobserved? This is how poor the coordination of the units in that area is. Meanwhile, nobody knows what is the neighbor doing, thanks to Glavkom and his micromanagement. So this is the crucial problem. You have this strategic balance maintained primarily by incompetence. Incompetence in Russia, incompetence in Kiev, in Ukraine, at the top. The Russians, their system Putin is preventing them from inventing and adapting rapidly enough to take the Ukrainians by surprise. But they are given enough time to do that eventually. So they are in turn giving Ukrainians enough time to adapt to whatever innovations Russians are introducing. On the other hand, Ukraine has the capability to invent and to improve, but this is suppressed by incompetent military and even more so political leadership. Sorry, I have no good words and no nice words for this. This costs so many lives, so much money and time, and this is so frustrating. Meanwhile, that I abstain from really following daily developments at the front line because it's always the same. It's always the same, and the more it goes on, the more of the same we experience. So the mistakes, for example, during the Battle of Bakhmut in early 23, are now multiplied, and you can see them all over the front line wherever Syrskyi becomes, or one of his buddies becomes involved, but it's mostly Syrskyi because let's not forget, it is him who is taking decisions about what brigade is going to receive reinforcements in terms of troops, what brigade is going to receive additional UAVs, additional artillery support, more ammunition, whatever. Only he is making such decisions, nobody else in Ukraine. So when there is a failure on the front line, and he is also deciding who is going to command what of units. So when there is a failure at the front line, it's Syrskyi to blame and nobody else. But he is not running from his own mistakes. No, he is convinced he is right. And there is this, this was also the next point. Last year in December, was it December or January this year, Zelensky said, "Oh no, there is not going to be anymore this mismanagement of troops. There is not going to be no step back, or there are not going to be no step back orders." You can see this in one of his daily or videos or evening videos, and so on and so on. And what do we see now? It's all the same. There are still, no, you can't withdraw. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. Their troops are still mistreated by incompetent commanders who are usually Syrskyi favorites, or he owes them some sort of favor or whatever. Because, for example, one general, his family was taking care of Syrskyi family while during the Russian assault on Kiev early during the war. So, okay, this general has got a nice office and position, which doesn't matter. He can't do anything wrong. And even if Syrskyi is the commander, and he has the final say, so nobody cares about this gentleman. But he has got a safe position, everything is fine, and so on and so on. This is how it works. And this is really a shame that it is working this way, because there's so much ability, still so much ability in Ukraine, so much will to overcome all of this, so much skill, so much experience. And in certain fields, you see Ukraine making major progress. But whenever there is such a progress, it's spoiled again by Kiev, which is then making fantastic announcements because it needs wins all the time, and it's PR points, so to say, propaganda points to satisfy the public and say, look, we are producing this super turbo long-range attack missiles. We are producing this, we are producing that. But actually, they cannot even explain how do they want to manufacture so many UAVs or so many such missiles without manufacturing sufficient number of engines for them, for example. But who cares? Important is for Kiev to have another piece of good news today, and everything else is unimportant. And it so happens, of course, yes, the Russians striking with so many UAVs almost every night. So, well, that is not bad, but at least the Air Force can claim to have shot down another few hundreds of them. Nobody's talking about those which have hit and what kind of damage and what kind of casualties they have caused, except it's about civilian casualties. So this is kind of creation of a parallel reality in Ukraine. There is a parallel reality already. This has been created in Russia. This is absolutely without any doubt. But do you have to copy this process in Ukraine as well? There is no strategic plan how to defeat Russia in Kiev. There is no vision how to develop the Ukrainian armed forces into specific direction, which would be necessary to defeat the Russians on the battlefield. Just like all over the West, there is no vision of this. 3.5 years of war, and nobody has ideas how to win this war. Nobody is even thinking in that direction. Now we have to make agree a ceasefire with Putin, and then deploy peacekeeping troops in Ukraine. What kind of solution is this? Nobody knows, but this is making everybody happy, and let's feed the media with this kind of bubbling, and then everything is going to be fine. So this is, you asked me what is the situation, and this is my assessment of the situation. It is just frustrating, nothing else, because there are solutions, they are known, they are ignored, because the people at the top know better, and you shouldn't meddle into this, and you have no idea, whatever else. There is 2 million excuses why not. Therefore, please, let's not apply anything of this, and maintain the status quo. Then everything is fine,
Tom, about the improvement and reforms in Ukrainian army, you have described Ukrainian forces as a kind of two-class army,
yes,
with elite brigade and ordinary ones. But by the way, every army in the world has its elite units. It's normal, yeah? It could be. But what makes Ukrainian situation differ? And if we speak about the real situation, do you think that now Ukraine have possibility to make a standards for all army, like third assault, for example, or it is simply unrealistic with the resources available?
Okay, let's start with the start. Within the Ukrainian armed forces, you have a specific number of brigade commanders, deputies, battalion commanders, company commanders who are absolutely excellent, marvelous people, highly experienced warriors. And when I'm talking about warriors, I'm not talking just about this pathos and this is what we see in Hollywood movies, so to say, but really people who know how to position their troops, how to let the enemy come and smash them in huge numbers, with no losses at all, or how to, and especially how to counterattack, at what point, in what direction, what of enemy positions, with what troops, what mix of troops, how supported, and so on. So really experts in these regards. They're classy people. They are so good, I would go serving in their units any time of the day. Any time of the day. I wouldn't serve in any of NATO units right now, but I would serve in their units. So much that this is their quality. And the problem is, this is on one side causing lots of jealousy. Jealousy between whether they're superiors or other brigade commanders or these corps commanders or wannabe corps commanders or should be corps commanders or commanders of territorial groups or strategic groups or tactical groups or whatever it is called in all of this is ESU right now. And the people in question are actually incompetent, and therefore of the opinion that one cannot apply the experiences and methods and procedures applied by these successful commanders everywhere else. This is actually nonsense. My own experience is, if you take care about every single human being with whom you are working, whether in civilian or military, is that you can teach everybody everything, really. That it just needs a basic wish to learn, basic motivation, and you can already achieve major, really, successes. I've used to work with people who were written off by everybody. People for whom my colleagues said, "Oh God, you can't work with him. You can't tell him anything. He's not listening. He's not doing this and he's not doing that. He would never listen. He would never follow the order. Never, do anything senseful. The only thing you can do is fire him or get rid of him or her." So I would put myself next to this person, show him how to do his or her work, and then correct him at work. And I can tell you in hundreds of examples, it worked without problems. Yes, sure, there are always 4 or 5 where it didn't work, but what is it in comparison to everybody else, to the total number of successes? So therefore, when somebody now explains me that, or not to me, but to commanders of, for example, 3rd Azov Brigade or to commanders of the Azov or the 12th National Guard Brigade or other similar commanders, when somebody comes, and I hear this often happening, and explains them, we can't do that, or in all of the ZSU, it would cost too much, or it's impossible for this or that reason. Really, 2 million of different reasons. I do not care even to listen to all of them. Then I call this nonsense, because I know it is possible. One just has to let the people do their job, which they have proven they can. So if they can't, then let him do his job. Where is the problem? Why don't you let it? It's better for you as his superior. But this would prove that what these superiors have shown in the last at least 2 years, if not last 3.5 years, if not in the last 20 years or 25 years or 35 years, have done was wrong, was stupid, was primitive, was incompetent and unprofessional. That was expose them. So they would all lose their job eventually. They know it, so therefore they're preventing this. That is the problem. So when you now ask me, I mean, look, if there would be the war would be over tomorrow, Ukraine could send half of its successful officers abroad, for example, to NATO, and that would be required actually if NATO would not permit it. Of course, that is a different question. And they could retain the entire NATO, because NATO troops I'm also in touch with lots of people here and there in different countries that are NATO members, and I hear what are they training, how are they training, and this is entirely obsolete. It's hopelessly obsolete. I mean, it would be funny to watch Russia invade, for example, Baltic states or whatever other part of NATO, because NATO would first suffer horrendous casualties, or at least comparable to those of the Russians. And the Russians would suffer horrendous casualties because of NATO's firepower, which is far higher than Ukrainian. But on the other side, NATO would lose lots of troops just because of stupidity of its commanders, because of their refusal to listen to experiences from Ukraine, but also Ukrainian refusal of Ukrainian political military leadership to apply the lessons of its own successful commanders. So it is a sort of degeneration everywhere. Idiocracy rules and everything is fine as long as everybody is stupid. Fine, I'm paying you to be stupid. That is the principal way of governing here in the EU. Meanwhile, not to talk about the United States, I've written them off, so I'm not going to mention them as example. People are paid. People like me, and there are lots of more of them than I am. I'm just one. They are paid to be stupid and to publish stupid statements, which are unsupported, which have absolutely stand in no relation to reality, and they're paid lots of money to act that way. And everything is fine, and everything is happy. You just need to monitor the situation with India and Pakistan. Their war from May this year has shown some very specific things, exposed some very specific things. But no, this is not good. No, we don't want to hear about this because Indians are, between others, using Russian weaponry. And they are buying Russian oil and selling it actually to us, to the West mostly. But we don't like this, at least officially, even though buying this oil all the time. Therefore, let's ignore this war and let's just talk about amazing, endless success of Israelis against Iran, which is actually half of it is a propaganda story, but never mind. This is Israeli, they are holy people, God's hand-picked people. So therefore they are right. But Indians and Pakistanis are uninteresting. At most, Pakistanis, whose own top politicians say we are the front, declare themselves and their political parties the front of major Islamist jihadist organizations, terrorist organizations. Now Pakistanis are our best friends, the biggest allies in the war on terror. So this is this kind of stupidity that rules the West. There is a genocide going on, committed by Israel on Palestinians. No, that was a mistake, that was this, that was that. Only any kind of excuses except calling it what it is, a genocide, and acting correspondingly. And therefore, you don't need to be surprised for how is the West mistreating Ukraine, because it's the same. Oh God, Ukrainians, half of them are at least some Russians actually who lost the way and forgotten their origins. And Kiev, is it not Russia? Kiev is Russia. So who cares? Where is the difference? Oh gosh, these guys over there are crazy. We don't want to waste too much time with them. It's easier if we maintain our status quo. Everything is fine. Let's help them a little bit, but foremost, we must, that is now the newest, since 1 year, we must prepare because Putin is going to invade NATO, in 2 months, or 2 years, or 3 years, or 5 years, 10 years, nobody knows, but who cares? We have to prepare for this. This is more important than supporting Ukraine right now, at least officially. And so it comes down to, in the West and in Ukraine, to so to say, private initiatives. That means, like in this case, the Third Corps commander says, okay, listen, I have an excellent brigade here, so and so many battalions. Okay, you send this company to the battalion of that brigade, you send this company to the battalion of that brigade, corset them, retrain them, rework them, support them. We establish radio communications with each other, battalion commanders, brigade commanders, we are talking regularly with each other. And if somebody lies to me about some lost position, then that guy better, does not appear in front of my face again, because it's not going to be very pleasant for him. This is how you create the situation. These troops, you create automatically an entirely different spirit between the troops. They're proud of themselves. They are well trained. They are crack troops. They know what they have gone through. They know what they are facing. They know what they are fighting for. and they're fighting with far more efficiency than anybody else. And this is just one example. There are one or two other examples. As far as Siski didn't prevent them, so it's pressure again. I cannot avoid it. Excuse me, but the gentleman in question is responsible for the situation. I'm not in charge, and I don't want to be in charge, but he is. He wants to be in charge. He wanted this position. He sabotaged the counteroffensive in summer 2023 in order to be in this position. So he needs not complaining if facing criticism from me, for example. Not only from me, there are even more Ukrainians criticizing him, and so on and so on. So this is the problem. You have excellent troops or commanders. You have excellent troops as well. They could teach everybody a lot. but it is so that official Kiev is doing its utmost to prevent them from reaching the position from which they can teach all of the Ukrainian armed forces, not to talk about NATO, about their experiences. Because it is silly, what do you have chiefs of staff in NATO countries explaining, oh gosh, I can't hear about the word Ukraine anymore, and don't talk me about UAVs, I don't want to listen to this anymore. I mean, and you are a professional general of a noble Western armed force. So what? By ignoring Ukraine and ignoring UAVs. So therefore, everything is going to be fine if you ignore the problem and continue training your troops like 70 years ago, or what? This is okay. But that's how it works.
Tom, let's speak a little bit about Ukraine's air defense.
Yes.
In your analysis, you know that interception are not always successful, of course.
Yep.
Yeah, we know about that.
Yep.
Is it mainly a technological limitation or an issue of organization?
It's essentially the same problem like within the ZSU, within ground forces. You have a commander who is so super smart, and several brigade commanders as well, who are so super smart that nobody can teach them a lesson, and that they are never going to learn any kind of lessons. Who are so obsessed with their own position and maintaining this position and this old Soviet-style bravado, hurrah, and everything is so fine, that they do not listen to any kind of critique. And correspondingly, what is the result of this? Whenever there is a lesson to learn, like when some F-16 get shot down by own troops or by the Russians, what has happened so far, then they announce investigation, and there is going to be an investigation. We are going to publish everything. 2 days later, nobody remembers that this investigation has been announced, and there is never any kind of publication in this regards. At most, some civilian court brings a decision 6 or 9 months later. Yes, this F-16 crashed in this and that area. So, in a high-tech branch of armed forces, and nominally at least in Ukraine, this is not anymore the case, but nominally at least, there's no other branch of armed services that is so much high-tech as air defense, air force and air defense. This cannot work well. Even more so if you then go around, like has happened the last 1-2 years, and brag with the establishment of this, do such things like bragging with the establishment of this machine gun armed mobile anti-aircraft battalions, which are actually absolute waste of troops, armament, ammunition, equipment, supplies, and commanders, because they have minimal effectiveness. At most, they have managed to force the Russians to fly their incoming UAVs, Shahid or Geran, and similar at 2,000 or 3,000 meters altitude, so that they would be outside of the reach of machine guns. So this is all that they have managed to effect. What result has this had in turn? Now Ukraine is even more dependent on surface-to-air missiles to shut down the incoming UAVs. And it was critically short on surface-to-air missiles already in February the last year. So you can imagine what is the situation now, 1.5 years later. Which in turn is why then it so happens that along this relatively limited sector, the front line in the Pokrovsk area was hit by some 3,500 UMPKs or glide bombs, Cubs, of the Russian Air Force. Why? Because they can get close enough and drop so many bombs without being obstructed by the Ukrainian air defenses. So principal problem is incompetence at the top, resulting in refusal to learn the lessons. Because if you are top commander and you consider yourself some kind of holiness, which cannot be, should not be, it's a blasphemy if this holiness is criticized. Then you are instilling the spirit of corresponding spirit into your force. So therefore, all the other commanders down the chain of command are behaving in a similar fashion. Fact is, however, people, so also military commanders, are making mistakes. And if nobody is learning from these mistakes, and if the information, correct information, factual information about lessons learned from making mistakes is not distributed within the force, and that is the case within the PSU or PSZSU, then there is no process of learning there's no learning process. And then you have the situation like in the air defenses where brigade so-and-so does not know about combat experiences of the brigade so-and-so, and therefore the first brigade, or let's call it brigade A, is doing all the same mistakes like brigade B has done them already 2 years ago. That is the problem. And when you then have the commanders at the top who are then, again, after this old Soviet-style bravado, look at our troops and take photographs of them, and there are no Russian UAVs are going to pass through here and whatever else. Nobody needs this in the 21st century. In the 21st century, you need innovation, you need new technologies, you need new tactics, new tactical solutions, new approach to the problems in question. 80 years, 90 years old, style of command is not going to work in that environment, and that is the problem number one, and that is the problem number 100 of the Ukrainian air defenses. This is why they, as much as the troops involved are doing their best, in grand total, the effectiveness is actually decreasing. And then it's, of course, opportune for the top leadership to say, oh, we can't talk about what the Russians have hit last night because this is military secret. We can only talk, if at all, then about if any civilians have been hit, then we are talking about this, but nothing else. So the same problem like everywhere. This needs a reform. It needs a reform at the top, instilling an entirely new set of procedures in order to retrain the troops, to retrain the officers commanding them, to bolster this innovation, the spirit of innovation, to bolster the search for new solutions. Otherwise, you're going to stagnate and sooner or later have 200 or 300 UAVs hitting by night, not only being launched at Ukraine, but actually hitting their targets. Currently, the rate is at something like 30 to 50 a night, hitting target. This is at top of those which are shot down. So this has to stop, which is so particularly absurd, because Ukraine has the means and has the people, has the capability, has the skills to win this war, but its own political and military leadership are doing their utmost to prevent this from being applied, from all of this knowledge to be applied. Instead, it's losing itself almost like Pakistani leadership in some kind of daydreaming. Oh, look, the Chinese are coming with 86 billion investment of $86 billion. Correspondingly, everything is going to be fine. Then they squander $86 billion of Chinese investment plus 26 billion in Chinese loans. And then wonder how comes Pakistan is not economically prosperous. It's the same in Ukraine. You can send whatever you want to Kiev, to official Kiev, and it's going to be wasted. Except you have private connections and do something on private level, remain, so to say, still outside of the view of the chieftains in Kiev, then things are working. But as soon as it grows too large, then you are in trouble. You don't want to trouble yourself with this, at least. It's a pity, because you have the capability, you have the skills, you have the knowledge, you have the people who are capable. And in few cases, things are moving forward. We have seen, for example, the establishment of this UAV branch and Major in command, and things are moving very fast, very well over there. And this is good that way. But this has been done solely for that purpose, for propaganda purpose, so that Kiev has good news. Not really because they care so much about the success of this branch in combat about the Russians, against the Russians. So again, wrong purpose. The actual purpose should be develop this branch so much that it defeats the Russians. But for this, you need a strategic plan. And for strategic plan, you have to think about a few steps in not only few steps, dozens of steps in advance. Logistics, how to manufacture this, where to manufacture it, how many people to find who can manufacture it. Train the people who can manufacture this stuff. Train the people who can transport this stuff to the front line. Train the people who are training the people. Nobody's thinking about this. I don't see this really happening in Ukraine. And therefore, in 6 to 12 months, we two are going to sit here again and talk about frustrations, just like the last summer.
Oh my God, I just want to ask you about the expectation.
It's the same. It's the same. Last summer, we were sitting here and discussing the Kursk operation, and is it making sense, or is it not making sense, and why is it making sense, or why is it not making sense? And I was all the time in the rear of my back, my brain actually. Sorry, I was all the time concerned about Vuhledar and about the situation of the 72nd Mechanized Brigade, because I knew it was very bad and it is worsening by day. And I was wondering why Kiev is not thinking about, is not reacting even to the calls for help from the brigade. And it didn't help. It didn't respond to calls for help until what was left of the brigade de facto had no other choice but to run away. And then to run away over a field sown full of Russian mines, and with Russians shooting at them from three sides. And then what was left of that brigade was hit by successive additional Russian assaults. And what a surprise, it had to withdraw ever further north. We have seen this in August, September, October last year. But no, Kursk was more important because Syrskyi needs a win. And because his tactical performance at Ilovaisk and this extracting his troop out of the cauldron created by the Russians driving on both of his sides, that was his biggest military achievement and something he thinks that should be taught in military schools. Therefore, Ukrainian armed forces are currently fighting in nothing else but one cauldron after the other. He always lets the Russians pass through on either flank, and then the troops in the center are shot at from different sides, plus UAVs from above, plus Cubs from the Russian Air Force. And then what a surprise, this incompetent commander, this is what Syrskyi thinks, this incompetent commander there in the field has withdrawn his troops on his own. Oh, bad guy, very bad guy. And this is what is happening all the time, since Vuhledar last year at least, if not earlier. So, and again, he's not learning anything from this. The procedure is repeated, and nothing changes in this regards.
Tom, and the last question, do you think that a frozen conflict scenario is possible?
It's very likely, because when you have statesmen, under apostrophes, modern day statesmen, they're not after solutions, they are after maintaining status quo.
Mm-hmm.
They do not think about, and the people who are paying them, who are bribing them, who are actually in control. The oligarchy, whether in Ukraine or in the West, any Western country is actually controlled by oligarchs. You see this fully now in the United States, you see this fully in the UK, you see this in Germany, in Austria, in Italy, France, everywhere. In France, you have a president with 8% approval, public approval. I mean, the government with 8% public support is in power. But never mind, because the people who are paying him are rich enough to continue dictating such people what to do. And their principal aim is extracting profit and ever more profit, which is primarily possible thanks to very low and ever lower taxes for the super rich. So everything is fine. And in the case of Ukraine, it is obviously so that somebody there is cashing powerfully from the situation as it is. from a situation where there is a constant, persistent war in Ukraine, and where this person finds that it's better for this war to go on the way it is going on, than to defeat Russia and force it to withdraw. Therefore, what to expect in this situation? Until we get rid of such characters, sorry, nothing is going to change. We have to to do this, we need entirely transparent politics. This means who is supporting what politicians with how much money, for what purpose. Theoretically, best would be for the politicians to run around like Formula One drivers, with big advertisements on their chest and the back, so you can know, this guy is working for Parmalat, and this guy is working for Strabag, and this guy is working for Google, and, and so on and so on. This is how it works, because that is modern day politics. And it doesn't matter whether it's Zelensky in Yermak or somebody else, or Stama, or what's his name, Merz, or Italian guys, or whatever, they are all the same. And until this is that transparent, nothing is going to change, which means we need reform everywhere. Why? Because we need to find out politicians who are thinking further, ahead than their private interests, so to say, and administer only in interest of the super rich, who are thinking about position of their people, of their countries, of their nations, enter Europe at least some 5 months, 5 years, 50 years ahead. Fact is, the way we are right now, or the entire situation, which is going nowhere, if not into a complete ruin of Europe. We are really going to end with Chinese peacekeepers in Ukraine, and then protecting this troublemaking and never ending wars, fighting Europe, this area, troublesome area, like some kind of a colony. They're already manufacturing all of the stuff we are using daily, from telephones, from smartphones and TVs to cars and whatever else. So sooner or later they're going to take over, obviously. And if we don't prevent this through reforms of our own politics and economy and the armed forces, we are in deep trouble. So this is what is necessary in Ukraine, this is what is necessary in Europe, and so on and so on. And when you then ask me about the outlooks, otherwise, well, as long as there are no such changes at the top, it's going to be very hard for Ukraine to change the situation on the battlefield. I've said this already a few months ago. If this goes on like this, by the end of the year, the Russians are going to approach Dnipro and Zaporizhia, the cities. There are only going to be a few thousand more dead Ukrainian troops, even more, or at least as many civilians, and several thousands dead Russians, about whom nobody cares, not even the Russians. That is how this is going to go on. I do not see a collapse of the armed forces, although many of my colleagues are still expecting this as enthusiastically as they have expected this collapse already in summer 2022. Excuse me, I'm laughing about this for a simple reason. I remember what kind of experts were expecting collapse of the Ukrainian armed forces after the loss of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk in what was it, July 22. And I thought to myself, gosh, this guy knows so much about Ukraine. I mean, he's working there for 20 years or something. He knows the country, he knows the armed forces. And if he says the armed forces are short of collapse, perhaps I'm a little bit either too bold or too poorly informed. How comes he's come to such an idea? But I was checking with contacts, and people said, no, we are fighting. Okay, yes, it's shit here, but it's not good, but we are fighting. We are not going to fall. Okay. And 3 years later, the same people are still expecting collapse of the Ukrainian armed forces any moment now. And let's be serious. It is really the situation of the infantry in particular, of brigades trying to hold the line, in some sectors is catastrophic. I mean, I can tell you, if you send any kind of NATO force to fight such a battle, these guys would drop their weapons and run away after 2 days of what Ukrainians are experiencing every single day on the front lines. So they would hold out. They wouldn't be so stubborn and so courageous to continue fighting. But Ukrainians do. So there is obviously inability to understand this capacity and this capability to remain stubborn regardless of the circumstances. That's why I say, despite claims by some of colleagues, no, the ZSU is not going to collapse. It's going to hold out even against its own top commander, who is trying everything in his powers to make it collapse. But it's not going to get better. That's the problem. And this is pity. It is pity, and it is a tragedy, especially because it's causing so many losses to the troops and so much suffering, unnecessary. I mean, if you can't do better than you are doing, then why not? Where is the problem? Why is it a problem to let your commanders criticize you and apply their lessons? Why is that such a problem? But no, I'm a Glavkom. You can't criticize me. You can't say I'm doing something wrong, or one of my buddies is doing something wrong. Oh, no. We are, please. You can criticize yourself if you like, or your incompetent troops, but not me. This is the sole problem in this war, and this is the core problem in this war I see right now. And this must change. And we are talking now, we are turning in circles for 1 year and talking just about this issue, and the issue is not solved. There were faint outlooks of some improvement as soon as Rapati took over. Before soon, Siski did everything in his powers to spoil his reforms, and Rapati drew the only logical consequence. Thank you very much, goodbye, I'm doing something else. And now he has no say. Correspondingly, the situation is getting worse and worse by day. But so when you ask me about outlooks, it's not going to get better. That is a problem. Without these fundamental reforms, I'm going to admit it openly. I was actually hoping that, knowing a few Ukrainians and what kind of ideas they're having, what kind of solutions they would like to apply. That was already back in 22. I was hoping that this is going to prompt some kind of reforms in the West, because we need reforms, and Ukraine would be ideal to stand as an example that reforms are possible, also at war. But if such reforms are not applied in Ukraine, then we in the West do not have a suitable example to say, look, the guys over there, despite the Russian invasion, despite a war extermination against them, they have reformed themselves and were successful because they did this, and this. Therefore, we need to do the same. But this is not happening. And so this is also frustrating for me, I must admit.
Tom, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you.
Most welcome. Thank you very much, and please stay safe.
Thank you.